Shonik advises global organizations on EU regulatory development and engagement strategies. His sector expertise is focused on regulation of technology including online platforms, e-commerce, transport and mobility, emerging technologies, short-term accommodation, data and competition issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sort of privileged to be able to introduce our keynote speaker for today, the award-winning political journalist and broadcaster, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel has held prominent roles at influential newspapers such as the Daily Mail, the Times and the Sunday Times. More recently, she has carved out a real niche for herself in breaking very, very big stories, normally scandals, and I'm sure some of you will remember some of the more fruity ones of late, particularly in the pandemic, and I'm sure Isabel's going to be able to talk a bit more to those experiences that she's had over the years shortly. She's currently serving as the international editor at Talk TV, but she also contributes to publications regularly such as the Telegraph, the Spectator, the Sun, and the Mail and Sunday. And outside of her journalistic work, she has also ghostwritten and collaborated on many high-profile non-fiction books, including White Flag, which was on the state of the UK Armed Forces, Call Me Dave, which was the unauthorized biography of David Cameron, and, of course, Matt Hancock's Pandemic Diaries. Please, everybody, put your hands together and give a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Isabel Oakeshott. Let's make a couple. I'll let you go.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. It's a real pleasure to come and talk about such an exciting and important industry. Over the years, I have done a real variety of speaking gigs, some more exciting than others. A particular low point many years ago was a speech for an association of boiler manufacturers. I think that was pre the whole net zero debate becoming quite so controversial, so I couldn't even talk about boiler taxes and freezing grannies. So coming here today feels so much more relevant. Anyway, before coming along to give a presentation or an interview like this, I do like to do a bit of research. So I thought that I would try to find out a bit more about Labour's plans for your sector, because I think we can probably all agree that we are, in a few months' time, going to have a Labour government. So, quick Google, have a look, see who the relevant shadow minister is. And it comes up as Angela Rayner. So, I thought I'd give her office a call, see if I can get some info. It went something like this. Ring, 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 ring. Hello, it's me, Isabel Oakeshott, political journalist. I'm ringing about Airbnb. The reply, Angela only has one home. She lives in it. It's her primary residence, apart from the other one that she had, which she sold. Are you now accusing her of making money from Airbnb? Seriously, is this the latest claim? We categorically deny that Angela ever made any money out of either of her homes with Airbnb. Me, no, it's not about that. Listen, I want to know about your policy on people who have second homes, spare rooms. Should they be able to clunk? Down went the phone. All right, well, I made that up. But actually, I thought it was a bit unlikely I would be able to get anything out of our Ange at the moment. So I decided to try another route, and I'm not making this bit up. I did a bit more research, and I came up with an article about Labour's Airbnb policy on a website called Landlord Today. And before I go on with this, I just want to check whether there's anyone here from Landlord Today, publication, Landlord Today, okay, good. Well, anyway, bingo, Landlord Today has a recent article referencing a Labour MP called Rachel McLean. So I rang the parliamentary switchboard, and this is true, I'm not making this up, and they connected me to Rachel McLean's office. And I explained that I was coming here to do this speech, and I might write a bit about it for the Telegraph, and could I talk to Rachel about her views and where the party is going on this issue. A few minutes later, I was really surprised because I got a call from Rachel herself. And I thought this was a bit strange because Labour MPs are generally a little bit wary of me for all sorts of reasons. So I was really delighted. Cue a very confused conversation about Labour's policy on short stays and this lady's predictions for what they're going to do. She seemed quite bewildered as to why I was asking her about this and referencing this article on her in Landlord Today. And it gradually became apparent that the Rachel McLean that I was talking to is a former Tory housing minister, not the Labour MP who has a constituency with a lot of second homes in Yorkshire. So Landlord Today had got the two of them completely muddled up and quoted the wrong person. The person you guys need to be interested in is an MP called Rachel Maskell, who has big views on this issue, wants yet more tighter regulation and licensing and God knows what else. And she does have strong and robust opinions on it, so I rang her, and I'm sorry to say, being a Labour MP and probably not my best friend, didn't call me back. In any case, what I will try to do today with my political insights is be more accurate than Landlord Today, try not to muddle up Labour and the Tories, and give you a bit of an overview of where I think things are going politically, what excitements are coming down the track with the election, how that might play out, because there's an awful lot more to say simply than Labour are almost certainly going to get a stonking majority. So with that introduction, hopefully we can enjoy a spicy conversation.
Sounds good, Isabel. Thank you. And welcome again. Before we get to the sort of the nitty-gritty about the political stuff, it would be great if you could just say a couple of words about your experiences of our sector. Have you had much involvement with the holiday letting previously?
Yeah, so I dipped my toe in the water of this one. Would have been the summer of maybe 2020, I think, or maybe 2021. 2021, because I think we were just coming out of all the pandemic restrictions. And I was a bit desperate for money at the time, and I thought, I've got a lovely house in the Cotswolds. We're often away in the summer somewhere else, so I thought, well, it's a real good opportunity to try to make the house work for us. Kids were really anti it, like properly hostile, really couldn't be bothered clearing out their rooms, putting everything into boxes, made a massive spoilt fuss about it. But I just thought, right, this is a great idea, you know, everyone does it, going to make some money here. And I had a number of bookings quite quickly because that was a time no one was really traveling still abroad, so there's a real kind of demand. As I'd never done it before, I was really nervous. I'm a bit precious about my house, and there's lots of nice things in it. And I think I had 3 or 4 bookings through Airbnb, and then one was through somebody I knew, not very well, but it was a sort of semi-neighbour, and they were, where I live, there's a big music festival in the area, and they wanted the house for friends at the festival. Probably should have had some red flags at that point. Anyway, so I was very relaxed about her. I thought everything's going to be fine. I know her. This is not the problem. It's the Airbnb bookings that I'm worried about. Well, to cut a long story short, the Airbnb guests were absolutely spot on, no problem whatsoever. The lady that I know and her teenage children did everything that everybody fears as hosts. Left the shower running, it flooded the bathroom, the water went through down into my hallway, it got into the electrics, it ruined the television. She brought a dog, which she hadn't told me about. The dog left mess all over the garden. It rained throughout the music festival, so they were all in the house all the time. There was mud all over the walls. I mean, it could not have been a worse experience. So I haven't actually done it since then. The kids were all like, yeah, Mum, we told you so. So that was the end of that. But time has passed, and I'm kind of thinking about having another go.
Sounds like you need a property manager, Isabella. I think there's plenty of people out here who will be buying for your business once you come out. So
I also have a couple of small places on the Isle of Wight, and I think the Isle of Wight is massively undersold as a destination. I'm in a particularly beautiful village on the Isle of Wight with places very near the sea, and I think that's an opportunity, and I've got to get braver about it.
Brilliant. Good to know. So we've got this general election then that's imminent, we think, possibly imminent. What are your insights in terms of what you think is going to happen and how it might impact tourism on our short-let sector in particular?
So first of all, timing of the general election. I mean, this is a matter that obsesses me just because, you know, my partner runs a political party, Reform UK, and, you know, I barely see him already as it is, never mind as the election gets closer. The whole of Westminster is obsessed by when is this election going to be? And I think ordinary people also want to know, for whatever the reason, you know, whatever your politics, I think most of us just want to get it over and done with. I actually read the big announcement from Rishi Sunak this week on the migrant boats, in which he said that he wants these flights to Rwanda to begin, that they will begin taking off, allegedly, in the next 10 to 12 weeks. So that takes us to early July. I read that as increasing the possibility, the chances of a summer election, end of June, beginning of July, because I think, not that even Rishi himself will know yet for sure what he's going to do, I think he'll want to hold the election before the flights are about to take off. Because either they're not going to take off because there's going to be all sorts of legal stuff that they haven't anticipated, or people lying on the runway crying and saying this can't happen, or they will take off and the small boats will keep coming. And if that happens, then he's absolutely shot to pieces on illegal immigration. And that is a massive problem for the Conservative Party, with the insurgent right of centre party like Reform UK pushing on immigration really hard, and then Labour, who I think are very exposed on this issue and are currently doing very well not talking about it very much. So I think that Rishi's, in short, I think that the Prime Minister's speech this week increases the chance of an earlier election. That said, many of his MPs are vehemently against going any earlier than they absolutely have to, obviously, because they're going to lose their jobs, a lot of them. So he may find it impossible to do what he wants to do there, and it may end up being more like October, November. Politically, the longer he leaves it, I think the greater the devastation for the Tory party. Their main threat is from Reform UK. I'm not saying this as I'm not a member of Reform UK, but it is quite obvious that that is the key threat to the Tories now, apart from their, frankly, appalling records. And I think probably all of us, whatever our politics are, can agree that they haven't covered themselves in glory. So the longer they leave it, the more seats they lose, I think, because of the threat from the right. At the moment, I recently wrote about this for The Telegraph, Reform UK is basically a start-up. It doesn't have much money at all. You know, whereas the big parties, Labour and the Tories, they have donations that run into the high 30 millions. Reform UK's donations in the last 12 months have been, you know, in the hundreds of thousands-ish. So it's a small kitchen table operation. The longer they leave the election, the greater the chances that Nigel Farage comes back. With Farage comes big money. And that is where the threat to the Tories gets quite serious, even more serious than it already is. So who's the beneficiary of that? Well, bluntly, nobody expects Reform UK to land dozens of seats. Labour will still do very well. The big question is, what happens under a Labour administration? How entrenched is that? Maybe they get a massive majority, but can they deliver on the issues that ordinary people are so passionate and fed up about? I think the answer is no, and I think that they may not last very long. And the question then is, what has happened on the right of politics? What has happened with the remnants of the Conservative Party? Does it in some way join forces with Reform UK? And you've got a whole new offer on the right that becomes much more of a threat to a Keir Starmer administration. And I'm trying to tell you this in a dispassionate way. My politics are right of centre, but I can be dispassionate about it. I've been in this job for 15, 20 years, and I think this is an incredibly historic moment in UK politics. I think the Tory party, if it's not finished, then it is in trouble for a very, very long time.
Thank you. So it sounds like you're saying that we're en route towards a Labour government. What would that mean, given that we've seen so much change for this sector already with this particular government, and we've got plans for legislation for this year on registration, on planning. What does it mean then if the Labour government was to come in shortly? Does that all get ripped up, and what does the Labour government do?
A Labour government never, in my experience, wants to do less regulating. Labour governments like to do more regulating, and they will see this as an area in which they can win votes. Because of the housing crisis, the Tories have frankly been utterly negligent on house building. We've had massive legal immigration every year for the past few years. Whatever your views on that, you might like mass immigration, doesn't work unless you build the houses for all these additional people. And no government in my time has fulfilled their housing objectives. They simply don't do it. So, the result is a genuine housing crisis. And this is a juicy and easy target, this sector. And I also think, you are doing a fantastic job. You outlined in your introduction all the work you're doing behind the scenes to get in there on the consultations and all this dry stuff that people like me don't hear about. But I worry, seeing the scale of this today, it's an incredible industry. There's so much going on. This is not just Airbnb and Booking.com. It is everything that has spawned around it, which generates money and opportunity, growth, everything that every government should want in the economy. I worry that most MPs have no idea about this. They just think Airbnb. That's all they think. They think that or Booking.com, bit of short stay let. They don't know this is a whole sector. And I hope that you are getting all the support you need to get those politicians into an exhibition like that. Get them realizing this is a really big deal. You're not just, if you introduce so much regulation, so many stupid licensing schemes and tick boxes and, all these things that make it so difficult for you to operate as a host or for you to actually make a business out of this, then you are actually killing not just somebody like me trying to make a few £100 to pay for our next summer holiday. You are killing businesses that have the potential to grow and to actually help lift our economy out of its stuttering, virtually zero growth situation.
That's very helpful advice. Thank you. We have also got mayoral elections coming up. We're in London. The London mayor is actually the one who... London is where we have the only short stay regulation in place from 2015, the 90-day rule. And he has been a proponent of licensing. Is there any change expected in London?
So how disappointing is the London mayoral election? I mean, look, this is one of the greatest cities on earth. And yet we've got a mayor that, you know, whatever your politics are, he doesn't set the world alight, does he? You know, you're not seeing Sadiq Khan out there, you know, pushing London as a great destination. We've got horrific knife crime, the state of the streets in London. You know, I've lived here for a long time. I see things only getting dirtier, getting worse. I see antisocial behaviour becoming ever more brazen. We all know about the shoplifting. All of this affects London as a tourist destination. I wish, whatever your politics, I wish that there were so many more exciting, big characters competing for that job. But we are where we are. We've got Sadiq Khan, somebody called Susan Hall, that I'm telling you nobody at Westminster had ever heard of until recently. Susan who? I still don't really know who she is or what she does. And then you've got Howard Cox for Reform UK, who I know is working really hard, but, you know, it's a real difficult thing for him to come from nowhere. It doesn't have a massive public profile, and his campaign has all been about ULEZ and just how difficult it is in a car to get anywhere in London these days. Don't even get me started on the 20 miles an hour nonsense. I mean, you're lucky to be able to go 20 miles an hour anyway. So it's going to be Sadiq Khan. There's no excitement around it. And I would expect him to continue layering more regulation, make things more difficult, make your job more of a challenge. In no planet whatsoever is Sadiq Khan going to go, oh yeah, I'm just going to leave you guys alone. That's not going to happen. Because the housing crisis in London is only going to get worse. I don't see any reduction likely on the horizon of the number of people flooding into London, not as tourists, I'd love that to be the case, who need somewhere to live. And that is only going to put pressure on existing housing stock, encouraging people like Sadiq to go, well, what more can I do to make it more difficult for people to operate in this sector? So I'm afraid I'm a bit negative about that, which is why you need all the resources you can get to keep up that lobbying work, make sure they understand what is at stake here.
Right, moving on to something a bit more positive then, perhaps. I know, given your links to the Reform Party and you know, obviously their position on Brexit, there was a lot made around the Brexit dividend, and in particular, you know, we haven't really seen much of that, I don't think, yet filter through into tourism, into our economy. What do you think needs to be done to derive those benefits from Brexit? And do you think that any benefits have been realised yet?
I'm going to be absolutely straight and say no. And that's because Brexit has not been done properly. It has barely been done. We have the ability to operate independently, as a country, to do exciting things. I mean, my vision was very involved in the Brexit campaign. My vision was always not for Little Britain, but for something quite the opposite of that, for a low tax, high growth, you know, Britain being the, you know, Singapore on the Thames or whatever you want to call it. You know, I want us to have the same ambition and vision and excitement of places like Dubai. I'm a massive fan of Dubai. You go there, the whole place oozes ambition. And by the way, when you're there, last time I was there, I saw a piece of litter on the street, and that was an event. I was like, oh my God, it's a piece of litter. They don't do litter there. I want London to be like that. I want it to be full of sparkling buildings. We have the most incredible heritage here and buildings. We don't even light them up. You know, half the time we don't even have floodlights on things. You know, the Houses of Parliament were under scaffolding for years, and they didn't even do that thing where you can make it look like it's still Big Ben. They just had sheets on it. You know, I think we need to be showing off about what we have here, and this is a great example. You're looking out on the views here. None of this is done. It's almost like we've become an apology of a country. And that's not what Brexit is about. Do I think Labour is going to make that better? No. But the Tories have had their chance. They haven't done it. But I suppose at least from the Brexiteers' point of view, there is still the ability to do that at some point. You know, low taxes attract people. Tourist taxes do not. VAT on shopping for foreign visitors, that's not smart. That is idiotic.
I think we're going to have to wrap up soon. I don't know, Mike, are we going to have I'm going to go into the last question, but is there time for a couple of questions from the audience afterwards? I'll leave that with you. But Isabel, just to wrap up for you, you've been a political journalist for 20 years now. What are the scoops that you've been most proud of? And are there any anecdotes or interesting reactions that you could share with the audience today to wrap up?
We would need most of the morning for that one. I mean, where do we begin with Matt Hancock? I mean, my biggest thing recently, it was a year ago now, was the lockdown files. Probably people know that I released millions of words of WhatsApp communications. This was basically the government's entire response to the pandemic by WhatsApp. It was controversial. A few people felt a bit sorry for Matt. I don't. I think that the lockdown was a disaster, and repeated lockdowns were. In any case, we can argue about whether early lockdowns were needed, and that we are still all paying a price, all of us, but particularly our children. And I have no regrets whatsoever about doing that. I think it changed the debate, and I think next time anyone tries to stop our children going to school for a disease that they were never vulnerable to, I think there will be a lot more resistance and questions asked.
Isabel, thank you for those insights. That's been really fantastic. Please put your hands together for Isabel Oakeshott. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel.